Hello, and welcome to What We've Learned, episode 6. As ever, I'm joined by Shane. Hello, Shane.
Hello, Steve.
How are we this week?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. How are you?
Good. Wrestling with the demons of the internet. It seems that the Zoom generation, as we should soon be called, seems to eat all of my bandwidth and my time. But good. Enough time, hopefully, to talk about some interesting things. Where are we going this week, Shane?
This week it's all about account-based marketing, ABM, or as I prefer to call it, account-based marketing and sales.
Well, not just you, Shane, as I suspect we'll find out. I think that's a very good addition to that fairly used acronym, and actually maybe a good reason to start with a definition, because it's something we can assume everybody knows about and everybody's doing. It's certainly been a hot topic for the last number of years, in fact, in our industry, but it doesn't mean everybody's doing it. So we thought it might be a good thing to look at. But why now, Shane? Why is it such a relevant thing to look at, do you think?
I agree. I mean, it has become a hot topic before COVID, but I think particularly now when we've got limited resources, lots of marketing teams have staff furloughed, resources tight, we have to focus on best opportunity, whether that's best opportunity in pipeline, whether that's best opportunity in securing big deals through renewals. Focus is everything at the moment, and I think that account-based marketing and sales has a key part to play in that. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's not necessarily that we have to look at it right now just because of the environment. I think ABM is something you should be doing as good practice anyway, regardless of whether you're focused on existing accounts or trying to penetrate into new ones or both. So it does seem a logical time to look at it. And actually, it seems a logical place to start to define it as well. So although you and I could kick this around, Shane, I did have the fortune of chatting to somebody earlier in the week who is Mr. ABM, Andy Bacon, who, as we both know, is a lead consultant for B2B marketing on the subject. So Andy spends a lot of his time training and teaching and helping lots of organizations with ABM, and has developed a number of interesting assets to help support it. So I had the time earlier in the week, and I started with the very basic thing of, Andy, what is ABM?
It's a good question, that, because I believe that anyone you ask what ABM is, they'll give you a completely different answer. So, the known definitions as described by B2B marketing and ITMSA, treating a customer as a market in its own right, aligning sales and marketing to specific high-value accounts, etc., etc. I think there's a couple of challenges in terms of people understanding what ABM is. One is that first, it's got the word marketing in the title, which is not a good thing because everyone sees it as a marketing-centric activity when it really, really is all about sales and marketing working together. And the other is that many start their journey as you'd imagine by doing a Google search, and a lot of marketing dollars is being spent by the tech vendors. So the natural conclusion is this is a new technology. So they start there, which is not the best place to start, in my opinion.
Interesting. And classic problem with us marketeers of this desire to go to the shiny things. So is that a risk for us that we end up buying technology and then retrospectively thinking, oh, hold on a sec, this isn't the promise that perhaps we thought it would be. We haven't got the basics in place to actually target and get some kind of benefit, positive value out of our activity.
Yes, that's absolutely right. It's not about technology. It is a strategy. It's a way of thinking. There is a degree of transformation, and the technology is an enabler to enable ABM at scale. But true ABM is all about relationship building and good quality communications. Technology helps, but it's not the prerequisite.
It's part of the toolkit then. It feels, Andy, for me always, and often marketing feels a lot like this, it's kind of advanced common sense. It's those pillars of good marketing, being relevant and targeted in your messaging, but on a really focused level, particularly if you're looking at really high-end one-to-one or one-to-few account-based marketing. Is that fair? Is that simple enough a definition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is, as you say, right message, right people, right time. And that's, I think, what's become overlooked by the transition to digital is that, I describe it as mayfly marketing now, where campaigns are born, they reproduce, and they die in a matter of hours, just like the mayfly. And I think we've lost a lot of quality in that process because we're just producing a lot of content at scale. And the quality therefore inevitably erodes, so that everything has to become slightly more generic, or a lot more generic in many cases. So I think ABM is enabling us to sort of reset the dial a little bit and go back to some of the marketing fundamentals. And by that it means bespoke propositions which are based upon real insight of really understanding the challenges and opportunities that our clients are facing.
Yeah, it's an interesting right now as well, Andy, from a timing point of view. What does ABM mean given, as we're recording this, we're in lockdown, we're in this COVID-19 environment? Is ABM still relevant right now?
I would argue absolutely more relevant than ever before. In my recent blog for B2B marketing, I talked a lot about the sort of psychology and what's sort of going on in people's minds at the moment. And I think that if you look at what communications have been taking place to date, a lot of it has been, we're still here, business as usual, etc., etc. It's very, very much sort of internally focused. And that's not surprising because many organizations have needed to embrace the lockdown. They've been focused upon their teams. It's all been internalized. But where ABM is so relevant now is this principle of actually understanding what your customers' pain points are and seeking to add value and address those. And of course, whereas COVID doesn't discriminate, and it's we're all victims. The ways in which organizations are dealing with that and how it's impacted their business will be largely different. And therefore, to come out with communications that are generic just seems totally wrong to me. I think it's a great opportunity to demonstrate true empathy. And I know that's a word that's being bandied around. Hopefully I was one of the first to use it. Real empathy for what our customers are going through and how we can align our skills and expertise, our products and services to help them navigate their way out. So to my mind, ABM is really in tune with the moment.
It's two interesting words, Andy, and your post really talks about this, as you said, that use of empathy, trying to talk and use communication which is about them rather than about us. As you've said, a lot's very us focused in terms of that communication that's initially come out. And then that word help, which for me personally, I'm a big fan of as a marketeer. I think helpful really sells. So a nice way of focusing on very tailored communication that's right for now. And that's the other point, I guess, Andy, is the now is changing quite quickly. ABM can still adapt. I presume you need a more agile approach to it, because what might have been helpful and useful and empathetic a few weeks ago, maybe months ago, is going to be different now. Is that fair?
Possibly, to an extent. I think that although we're working our way through it, I get this sense that, is everything going to return to normal? Are we going to be in 6 months' time looking back and saying, what was all that about? It's now business as usual. I hope not, actually. I hope that from this cloud there is a silver lining, and we can take some lessons from it and adjust. And therefore, if that's true, I think that many of the things that we've all learned over the course of the last weeks will become embedded, and the way that we behave and the way that organizations behave and the way that their needs will change, perhaps permanently. Will things ever be the same again? Largely yes, but in many ways nuances will suggest that maybe not. So I think ABM is a long-term strategy. It's not necessarily quarterly driven. It's about positioning yourselves for not just now but the future. And therefore, I think some of the trends and changes in behaviour we're seeing will become more the norm.
Interesting. And it's a good point that it isn't just a sticking plaster or a campaign or disposable, as you talked about. This is a an initiative that is for the long term. It feels often to me ABM's like trying to start to turn a turbine. It takes a while to get that momentum, but once you do, you get that energy that goes with it, that you constantly are bringing out good quality the other end. What about the immediacy though, Andy? I mean, lots of broader marketing talk is around it's just completely a sin to be thinking about new business. There's no opportunity out there, no prospecting as of a few months ago should be happening now. Do you think that's true? And is there a room for ABM for prospecting, or is it a case that actually anyone out there who's doing ABM should really pivot it to make sure it's about looking after those customers that we've already got rather than going too aggressively for net new?
You hit a nerve with me now. So I think, going back to your first question, what is ABM? And I think many perceive it as a silver bullet to a broken demand gen system. And they see the high ROIs, and they say this is what we should do. And most organizations that I come in touch with at the beginning of their journey perceive it to be all about net new, when in fact, to my mind, the best place to start and where real value can be gained and the lowest hanging fruit is with existing accounts, for sure. And therefore, at the moment, ABM more than ever should be applied to sort of wrapping your arms around your existing clients, understanding how their needs have changed, not taking anything for granted, and improving and strengthening the relationship you already have, and being able to move with them, and not falling into the trap of complacency, of assuming that just because we've got a great relationship today or have had one for some time doesn't mean to say that that's not going to change. And that is for sure where I would be focusing my ABM at the moment, on existing accounts to improve and grow that business.
As always, I think Andy Bacon provides great clarity over what account-based marketing and sales is and could be. I think the other lens that you started off with, Steve, at the beginning of the podcast, is that it's a term that's used by lots of people. Perhaps they now realise they've been doing it for some time. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think you're right, Shane. And Andy's almost got a Zen-like state when he talks about ABM, which is really nice to listen to. He's very calming on the subject because there's a lot of noise around it and perhaps a lot of confusion. I think he backs up your point as well, Shane, is that, as you said, this isn't, perhaps it's badly labeled. It's not just account-based marketing. It is account-based sales and marketing. But equally, it's not just a quick fix. It's not something that we apply to try and close a monthly gap of lead quota or something like that. You do need to be a bit more cultural about how you approach it.
I agree. I think it's a strategic approach to your market, and you have to do that work first to understand, is your company and your products, is it appropriate for them? And I think understanding that and doing that strategic research first, sometimes it's really obvious. I did a really interesting piece of work last year with Maersk Drilling out of Copenhagen, and when you're selling oil rigs, it's fairly obvious that you have a few potential clients around the world. So, strategically, fantastic fit. But some other businesses, and as you found this in the case sometimes, Steve, it's not the right thing to do.
No, absolutely. And first and foremost, actually, it's understanding your market. As always, it is. It doesn't matter to be ABM or whatever your activity. You need to know who it is you're trying to talk to communicate with. And the environment in terms of the timing as well. And I think that's why ABM has had a lot more focus. I do apologise, Shane, ABMS, as we'll now call it. And maybe the S can stand for Shane as well. But because it isn't so appropriate to go and look for new business right now, then of course, keeping what you've got, really getting closer to those important big customers, it's a very logical reason to look at this as an initiative and a program to start to either review or to kick off in the first instance.
I completely agree. And I think that reviewing what you've got, part of that is looking at your infrastructure. Do you have a sales team that already supports key accounts? If you do, you're in a really good place. So understanding what it is you offer at the moment, do you have multi-million-pound contracts? The leaders in ABMS absolutely tend to be tech businesses at the moment. So, the size of the accounts, the complexity of the products they buy, the complexity of the organizations that you're marketing and selling to. All of those are big flags to say, if you're doing that global selling, big companies, big enterprise, then ABMS may be for you.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Again, it backs up what Andy said around, because a lot of the noise is by the technology space on this. It's very easy to assume that ABM just equals a technology purchase. And of course, it's a lot more than that. And indeed, if it's something that's new to anyone listening, you don't have to start by just opening your wallet to buy technology. I mean, there are ways of doing this in a manual fashion, aren't there, Shane, that doesn't rely on a technology install before you can start going with it.
Absolutely. And I'm a great fan of the keep it simple approach, as you know. And I think what we're about to hear next from Andy is some top tips on exactly that as to where to start.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hand back to Andy again, where I asked him also, if you're going to get started with it, where do you go and how do you avoid the mistakes that you could make as well?
It's a good question. Thank you. I worked with Andrea Clatworthy at Fujitsu on the top 10 pitfalls of ABM, which I delivered at B2B Ignite, and many of those hold true. I think for those starting out, I think the first thing is that everyone would say is that success in ABM largely depends upon this strength of sales and marketing alignment. And the danger is when starting out of making this a marketing-led, marketing-centric program. And there's an awful lot of work to be done in terms of building the platform, a transformation of the way that sales and marketing are working together, this true collaboration, shared goals, shared objectives, the groundwork, if you wish. This isn't a campaign. This isn't ends up that way, but in terms of to get the true value out of ABM and to ensure that it's successful, because you can't afford to get it wrong because you'll lose trust and confidence, is very much about doing the groundwork. And for that reason, I published the ABM Value Pyramid, which really shows the foundational layers, which are quite difficult to measure because they're soft KPIs, but they are incredibly valuable in making sure that the whole house of cards stands up. So, of course, at the end of the day, you're looking for a greater revenue, increased profit, deal speed, etc., in the normal business terms. But don't overlook the practical bit about sitting down with the sales team and really understanding what their challenges are and how marketing can help sales become more productive, more effective, to help their role.
It's a good start, isn't it? It's making sure those two parts of the business are functioning together.
Yeah.
And of course, as a marketeer, one of the bits I presume that's vital is once you've got that working party, we need insight. We need to understand these organizations, whether they're customers, prospects, or a bit of both. And that's what often I think marketing overlooks is the salesperson's ability to give us that insight as well. Is that a good place to go? Where else can we get insight as a marketeer so that when we start to form these messages, we know they're going to be bang on to them and relevant to that audience?
You're absolutely right. Insight is the key here. The danger of just talking to sales, and clearly that's where you need to start, is that sales don't know what they don't know. They will have a relationship. I mean, I'm going to make some broad brush comments here, and some people may wish to argue with it, but sales don't know everything that's going on in that account. They have a relationship maybe with certain members of a certain DMU, and there will be silos within that customer where they perhaps haven't got visibility. And there could be a lot of unknowns, and this is where marketing can add enormous value by coming to the table and saying, right, you told us everything about this account, but we've also found out this, X, Y, and Z. And in the meetings I've been with, where an insight report, having done some detailed third-party research, you almost see their jaw drop, and they go, where did you get this from? I didn't know about that. So it's really sort of shining the torch on the blind spots. It's not to say what sales tell you isn't valuable. It's just that we can enrich it to enable maybe a fresh approach. And let's not forget that, sales are just human at the end of the day, and they love to live, like any of us, they live in their comfort zone. And really, if we can enrich and enable them by giving them insight that enables them to have a better quality conversation about new things, so much the better.
It's a good point. As you say, it's not about salespeople. It's about any human and what dialogue or contact they have with that organization. I presume, therefore, Andy, it goes to follow that any part of the business that's got a touch point with that organization, that customer or prospect, but let's stick with a customer,
Yeah.
can help round the picture from a first party point of view.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking of customer support or on-site engineers, even finance, I guess, from a point of view of how that side of things operates. All of this must be good fodder for that marketeer to make sure they can just better understand that whole totality of a business.
Absolutely right. It's not. You're quite right. It's not all about sales. It's about the whole organisation effectively aligning themselves to that customer and looking at ways, the frustrational points. Now, how often do we, in our everyday lives, have a frustration? Our customer experience is compromised. All the beginning of it, the sale, etc., is wonderful, and then the after sales piece, the customer care piece, doesn't quite work to our expectations. And to your point, finance, you have some really gritty, irritable problem with a financial part of the business, and they just don't seem to talk to one another. And all the work that's been done is rapidly eroded because another division of your business doesn't get it.
Yeah, indeed. That disconnect, as you said, is that this can't be a sticking plaster. It's got to thread through the whole organization. That once you've been lured in by the smart marketing, it's got to follow through. That the delivery,
it's got to deliver the promise.
Absolutely. And what about third party? You mentioned that we can round that picture, that insight. What are the typical ways that a marketeer can gather additional outside of the organization insight that helps to show a brighter, wider picture?
Yeah, this is just good old-fashioned desk research, and there's specialist agencies out there that will are very good at this, of unearthing, mapping the organization, looking at what that organization's business plan is, what are they trying to achieve in the next 5 years, what's the board report saying, what's the overall umbrella strategy, where's this business looking to go, where we might be able to assist them on that journey. There is enormous amounts of information out there if you know where to look. So that's one source. The other is obviously data in terms of things like intent data, who's in market at the moment, and you can plug your existing accounts into those platforms and actually see that perhaps an existing client is trending on a specific topic that you hadn't put them, in an area that you hadn't anticipated. So it can help shine light in new areas that you might want to point your sales team at.
Interesting. And I suppose, as you said, this isn't exactly new. It's just some of the kind of foundations of good marketing is to remind yourselves of what you might have been taught or done earlier in your career that you've just not got to. Is that where are those pockets of research that just help round the picture, rather than working on subjectivity that is a classic human trait rather than a marketing or a sales trait, is out of date thinking. Andy thinks that this company is only capable of buying this product line and has missed the point because they just don't have that full picture. What about that intent? Does that mean right now that gives us that agility? As you said, the hope is, Andy, as you've said, that we continue some of the habits and patterns. It won't necessarily go back to how it was, but do those sources of data give us that much more current view on, actually, this is a company or an industry even that we weren't expecting to focus on, but this data is telling us they may well be a real opportunity that we may not have flagged without this insight, this information flowing into the business.
I think it provides the balance to what sales are telling you with what's actually going on in the market. And I think that, as I said earlier, both are important. But I think the danger is that if you salespeople are very good at selling, so they'll tell you exactly why a certain account should be in the program. They'll tell you everything they know about that business, and they'll attempt to steer you, you being marketing, in terms of, look, this is what we should be doing. But there is always a bigger picture. So I think it's like anything, it's a balanced diet really between the two, and you know, intent isn't everything. Intent data isn't the holy grail, but it can add an enormous amount of value. I think also, you know, this is ABM's providing a framework for change, and it's providing the impetus for a new way of thinking. And rather than just being a shiny new toy, it does act as a catalyst for transformation. And I think that's, you know, in terms of, you asked a question earlier, you know, how should people start out on this, whether they're on ABM or address their current program. It's really making sure that we're not allowing our approach to become eroded back into what we were doing before. The real win is the transformation, the way of thinking, the approach, and you've got to doggedly hold on to those, because where it goes wrong or where it fails to meet expectation is when we slide back into doing what we were doing before because it was easier. I talk very much around the difference between the ideological form of ABM and the silver bullet, quick fix plaster, and there is a difference between the two.
Interesting. And once we've got this program, you mentioned Andrea at Fujitsu, and there's other brands that have won awards, have been recognized for this. But for those that may not get the accolades in that way, what's this measure of success, Andy? If we start or revisit our ABM, what are the key metrics and measures or indicators that say, yeah, actually this is doing something of value? Is it as easy as this client's retained, they've generated a new opportunity, or is there a more subtle view in the short term, at least, of knowing that you're going in the right direction?
I'll point you back to the value pyramid, which has got these KPIs.
Sure, and we'll share that, Andy, as part of this post so people can have a look.
And I've sort of given typical KPIs through that journey. I think if you were to summarize it in one word, if you want a one-word answer, I'd say sentiment, in term a mutual confidence, as in the sales operations confidence in this account and the sentiment that they are receiving from that business in terms of their willingness to engage, the ease of engagement with that account, you know, from the point of, you know, I'll pick up the phone and I can actually get through to someone, or you know, just in the natural course of business, sales are seeing a mood change, if you like, a willingness to engage. And likewise, confidence from the other perspective in terms of the account's confidence in us, as in you know, the familiarity breeds contempt. And what I mean by that is that it's, you know, through a long-term relationship with an existing account, it's very easy for them to put you into a box and say, oh, that's what they do for us. I was on a call just the other day with one of the leading cloud tech vendors. I won't mention their name, and they were saying the biggest problem we have is that our clients put us into a box and they think that's what we do, but in fact we do a whole lot more. So if we can change the sentiment, educate, if you like, but broaden our customers' thinking so they realize that we can deliver a lot more, and we're seen really as more of a strategic supplier than just a tactical point solution, that's a real win.
Okay. And when we've had that win, Andy, of course, we toast our success, whether it's an award. But as Shane and I started this podcast, it was all around toasting and chatting about things over a gin and tonic, which, if we change the topic, I know is something that's very close to your heart. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your project there? That when you're not just ABMing, you've got many other skills.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. Yeah, no. So, well, gin's been the flavour of the moment for a while, and I live in a little village called Thames Ditton, near Kingston, and I think there was a bunch of us in the pub on a Friday night, and one of them said, "I think we should do a Thames Ditton gin." And we said, you know, can we do that? How do we do that? And we literally developed a product over the kitchen table, based all around Hampton Court, which is quite close to us. Developed a batch, did our first batch of I think 600 bottles, and we thought, well, if this doesn't sell, what we're going to do with it? Maybe we can give it to some friends, and we sold that within 2 weeks.
Wow.
and sold 5,000 bottles last year. So what was a little project, a little bit of fun, a community spirit,
Nice.
has, it's been taken to people's hearts, and it's a great little project because it really gets us out there and talking to people at the local farmers market, and it's a lovely bit of fun, really. So if anyone wants to try a new gin, it's very citrusy based. Women love it because it hasn't got the bitterness of normal gin. It's not acidic. So
Well, men as well. I'd be on that list. I think Andy as
I will
well.
send you a bottle
For everybody. Oh well, that's very kind. But if somebody wanted to go and have a look, where do we find it on the web?
Thames, as in the river, Ditton, DITTON, gin.com.
thamesdittongin.com. Fab. So once we've reviewed or started our ABM program, that's the place we go and toast our success.
Fantastic.
See, Shane, that's how you know you've got somebody who understands ABM. They have the time and the inclination to brew themselves, or to still themselves, in this Andy's case, their own gin to toast their success. Some really interesting points there from a man who knows his stuff with ABM, probably knows his stuff with gin, but the way to find that out is to go and find yourself Thames Ditton. But also, interestingly, he's a trustee of Serve as well. So when we were chatting earlier in the week, I was very lucky to get hold of him because he's volunteering his time running blood up and down the country to help out local hospitals. So a good man and a good egg all round. But some really nice points in there, Shane, if you are going to get started.
Yeah, I think we've lost our entire audience to thinking about gin instead. And having tasted the Thames Ditton gin, as you say, from a true gentleman, Andy, it's difficult to bring the mind back to where we started, which is account-based marketing and sales. But I'll do that. I think that coming back to where we started and thinking about the week we have had, I happen to know that you were busy at the beginning of the week doing some ABMS training. So what are the frameworks and models that you find useful when you do this?
Yeah, it's more advisory actually, but working with a client that we've worked with for a number of years, global brand who works in, how can I put this without giving away, fuels, energy, all sorts of different divisions like that. And ABM is a really important one for them. They sell into spaces like aerospace, so very large global brands that ABM is very applicable. But the challenge right now is, of course, because a lot of their customers are airlines and organizations that are not doing the normal trade. So it's not as appropriate to try and sell to them. But what's interesting is they're trying to assess how they pivot their behavior to still use the good practice they've learned with ABM to get closer to those organizations, but in an environment now where they may not get the same reward or the same value. So interestingly, Andy mentioned the value pyramid for ABM that he developed. That's really helpful. And we were looking at this very weak, that particular thing, just to give a framework to say, well, hold on, the KPIs, the hard versus the soft KPIs may be different now to perhaps they were 3 months ago to what they may be in 3 or 6 months time as we begin to come back into some kind of normality.
Absolutely. And I think the point you make there about doing things differently now is so true for anybody doing account-based marketing and sales, because actually the whole thing, as you say, is about being close to those accounts. And if you're in a market that's completely collapsed, you need to be doing something different for them. And as you say, making sure that they know that you're there for the long term. And we touched on it before in one of our earlier podcasts, but now is a great time to do research into your markets. So maybe there are some top accounts that haven't had an ABM approach that you could be using this, or looking at the messaging you're sending out. I think that's really important. This deep research into what your top spending accounts want right now is super, super important.
Yeah, it's a good point. And interestingly as well, actually, it reminds me of something that we worked on many years ago around trying to find the sleeping giants. So there could also be, to that exact point, organizations that are on your customer base that perhaps aren't buying as much as others, but the potential for them is there. The potential's always been there. Or maybe, to your point, because the world's changed very quickly, organizations that wouldn't have necessarily fared well on some kind of segmentation pyramid. So Andy talks about one-to-one versus one-to-few versus one-to-many with ABM. That could well be that you've got clients in that mid-tier that are worth the attention now because they've got suddenly great potential compared to where they were.
I think that's a fantastic point. And anecdotally, I heard a really important example of that is that law firms have been slower than most to invest in new technology, a bit of a wait and see. But actually, there's been a real wake up call with the working from home, and particularly for some of the global law firms, that their technology across the world is not equal, and that some of their colleagues are really struggling to join international calls and things, with really important decisions to be made. So I think the acceleration, and everybody's talking about it, money is being poured in by some sectors into digital transformation, by sectors that weren't spending before.
That's the thing. There is always upside to the downside in terms of looking more laterally. It brings you back actually to that good practice around ABM, is doing the research and the insight first. Not only so you're not working on subjective or out of date opinion. Again, Andy mentions how salespeople only know what they know, but that's not about salespeople. That's about all of us. So it could uncover that there are opportunities with existing customers, but it's still not off the table to sell as well, Shane. There may well be opportunity to bring in net new business right now because of these areas that are in growth.
Completely. One of the points that actually I am really passionate about is using ABMS when you're going into contract renewal, for example, or when you're about to land a net new client. And ABMS can work with a really tailored approach really well for that.
Interesting. Well, assuming we've still got people, given that we did get Andy off into the world of gin, the only thing I can think of that would be good alongside a gin is a takeaway, Shane. And I know you've got some thoughts or some takeaways. Sorry about that. Some takeaways for how you might get going with this. Any other thoughts to just add to what Andy's told us today?
Yeah, I mean, emphasising the importance, as you said, of selecting the right accounts for this approach and revisiting at the moment to make sure you are putting the effort into the right area. We've talked about enhancing data, building out the number of stakeholders that you can reach in an organisation. And again, with salespeople, moving to social selling more rapidly because of the world we're in now, actually time on researching and helping them to understand how they research deep accounts, along with the fact that marketing can give them help doing that, is a good way to spend some time at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot you can do yourselves, but of course there are others you can lean on as well. And not only are there some great examples of agencies and clients that have got exemplar work out there, there are lots of partners in this space, not just the technology, but lots of different aids that may well help you if you're starting this journey or reviewing your journey.
I think that working with someone who's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, there are fantastic experts. We're very fortunate in the UK, like Andy, Robert Norham, yourself. I know you do some around ABM. I love doing ABMS work, but we've also got incredible agencies as well. And one of the things that I think agencies bring is that independent lens. It's very difficult when you're really close to a market to see things differently. And I've worked with the likes of Transmission, really B2B, Agent 3. And in fact, I just saw on LinkedIn that Ernest have produced a new guide.
Yeah, really nice piece of work from Ernest, based in London. So they're amazingly bespoke marketing, their take on ABM, which, as you'd imagine from Ernest, is a very really creative way to look at something that is a bit perhaps, well, it's been so trumpeted over the last couple of years, even a bit tired. They've got a really nice 5 steps as well, Shane, that you may have had a chance to look at. Some very good content. If you go and have a look at ernest-agency.com, I think you'll find them over there. It's a really nice thing to take a look at.
Yeah, and I'll post out some of the award winners that have taken my eye on LinkedIn as well. Some of the ABMS recent award winners with B2B marketing. Again, some great case studies there of the companies doing it brilliantly.
Fabulous. And I guess the other thing to remember there is it doesn't have to be people in your own industry. Often we look for case studies that are very close to home, but I think that can often be a bit myopic. We'd be certainly worth looking at other completely different industries, maybe different spaces entirely, or even different geographies. There's always an essence that we can take from best practice to use for ourselves.
Great tip to finish on, I think, Steve.
Lovely. All right, Shane, thanks ever so much. Thanks for listening in. That's the end.